Hello, everyone. We got Instagram this right now. We've got Facebook. We are just winning all around today. All around. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Guys, how are you guys doing today? It is a brisk October day in Texas, which is kind of shocking because it'll be, 100 degrees by 1 o'clock. Actually, no, it's not getting that hot anymore. Hi, John Harker. What's up, buddy? Good to see you. Good morning, Ashley. Good morning. Icon Nay. Wow, 5 years. This is so amazing. I love you guys. Thank you, Icon Nay. Love it. Okay. Cassie, hey. Charlotte, hey. Brittany Carter over on Instagram says, been following her YouTube. I don't know. Thank you for it. I'm growing so much. Oh, I love it. You guys, this is amazing. Stacy French. I'm out of breath. Says, good morning, everyone. Blessings from Delaware. I bet Delaware is like gorgeous this time of year. Isn't that amazing? I love the fall colors. Buzzard Fraser Instagram. Y'all's names are hilarious. Good morning. Glad I caught you this morning listening from work. Well, hey there. Anne Marie Love. Anne Marie says, morning. Okay, so Regina says, yet another day with you. I hope you're not mad about that. She's not. She's a follower. She does it all the time. Okay, Tamika, what's up, girl? So good to see you. Kathleen Fritz says, good morning. Leslie says, it's cold here too. It's not cold. It's like perfection. Do you know what I mean? Like it's perfection. So Western Mama says, fun thing. My husband and I were the dry bones couple. Wow. Divorced and remarried. Our little baby is 7 months. Divorced, then remarried. Our little baby is 7 months now. Praise the Lord. That is awesome. Stephanie, hey. Ashley, what's up, girl? Good morning, lovely. Loved the wilderness message, Angela says over on Facebook. Wow, you guys are coming in hot. Love it this morning. Nice to see you. Here, Herdira just got off work. Well, welcome to your time off. I love that. Brianna says, let's get this today. Love this series already. Florida in the house. Instagram. Texas in the house from Angela 8919. Okay, so great. Guys, I've got my coffee. I've been up since like in the middle of the night last night, you guys. I mean, check my hair. It's going to look like this tomorrow too. I'm getting my hair done this week. Whenever my hair's up like this, it needs to be washed and it needs to be bleached. I mean, that's just what it is. Anyway, I'm getting my hair done this week. So my hair will look like this again tomorrow, probably. Gangster Prayer is on its way to me. Can't wait to read it. Brittany Carter Williams, tell me what you think about it. I love that book. Took it out of me big time, but it was amazing to write, and man, it's one of my book babies. Love it. Okay, so here we go, guys. I'm excited for today. I'm excited for tomorrow too. I've been studying a lot. So I'm trying. Like yesterday, I gave you guys so much content on the wilderness. It was like overwhelming, and I understand that. I'm a word girl. Like that's my thing. I don't really want you to get it from me. I want you to get it from the word. Today, I think, is going to be nice and practical for you. The thing about what I'm studying is I'm seeing just how this wilderness idea, this spiritual wilderness, is so ingrained in the culture and the principles of the Bible. It's so refreshing. Do you know what I mean? So I am very pumped to get into today. Facebook, are we frozen? I don't know if we're frozen or not. I can't tell. I don't know if we're frozen or not. I hope we're not. Anyway, I'm going to proceed until someone tells me that we are. But today, I want to get into some actual wilderness challenges. And it's going to be really good today because Wilderness Day 2, we're all talking for yesterday, today, and tomorrow about how do you win in a wilderness season? How do you win when, like we talked about yesterday, you are in an uninhabited place? Spiritually, in your life, you've never been here before. You've just come out of a habited place, like Egypt. Israel was in Egypt for 400 years. You guys, this was like they were set up. They knew what to expect. They had a way of life there. It wasn't a good way of life, but they did have systems in place in order to survive in Egypt. But as God delivered them out, there were no systems. There was no infrastructure to their society. They only had the dependence on God alone. I talked about yesterday how the wilderness is a temporary season. When you look at, we're going to look at Hagar, Elijah, the Israelites, Jesus. When they found themselves in the wilderness, they were actually transitioning from one season of life to the next. So the wilderness season is very important, but there are things that happen in the wilderness that are hard, okay? Can anyone just say, like, I appreciated your message yesterday, but just real talk, what I'm feeling is very hard. I hope yesterday you were able to get a hopeful perspective on your wilderness. But today I want to talk about things that happen, practical trials and tests in the wilderness, and how God comes in and walks us through. So today, as we win in the wilderness, I want to talk about the tests of the wilderness and the glory. The test and the glory. The test and the glory. Okay? I think it's important for you to know that one of the reasons for any wilderness is for the Lord to test you. Okay. There's lots of different things that he tests in the wilderness. Just the fact that you're in a wilderness is a test. Okay. But there are certain things when we go into the wilderness that, the Lord wants to see where your true dependence lies. Okay. In Egypt, Israel was very dependent on that lifestyle. But you can't take an Egypt mentality into Canaan, because God wants you to develop something in Canaan that you need special skills for in order to be successful in Canaan. Egypt mindset doesn't work in Canaan. So in the wilderness is when you rid yourself of an Egypt mindset. Okay, I hope this is making sense to you, because it's really, really important that you guys understand that one of the things that God is doing in your wilderness season is sort of renewing the way you look at life, okay? You don't need Egypt. Egypt is done. What you need is to ask the Lord, how do I move forward based on what my needs are going to be in Canaan, okay? So, the test and the glory. If you are in a wilderness season, you are being tested. Like I just said, wilderness alone is going to test you. But there are specific tests that people that are in the wilderness will find themselves in. Very specific ones. The first one I want to talk about is from my girl Hagar. I did a message, and I need to redo this message because it was one of my favorite messages I've ever done. It was called Hagar Hey. I loved it so much. But this test for Hagar that I'm getting ready to read to you was in the wilderness. And in the wilderness, she cried out to the Lord because she had lost all of her options. She did not know what to do. In a wilderness season, you'll look around and you'll say, I don't even know what to do. I have no options. There's no clear way forward. There's no clear way through what I'm dealing with. I'm just stuck. Does anyone feel like you're stuck today? Does anyone feel like you're in a situation where you're like, I kind of don't know how to get out of this situation. I'm stuck. I have no options. I have no one to talk to. I have no one to listen to me. I'm isolated. I'm alone and I'm stuck. Okay. Hagar in the wilderness, this is exactly what she was crying out to the Lord. I want to read this to you. Right here, Genesis 16. Now, what happened is, if you don't know the story, you really need to know the story. Okay, go to Genesis, look up Abraham, look up the covenant, all the things. Okay, but what happened is, as God delayed allowing Sarah to become pregnant, Sarah had a great idea. Listen, I want you to biblically lay with my handmaid, Hagar, and we'll produce an heir to fulfill the covenant that God has made to you. So Abraham and Hagar got Hagar pregnant with Ishmael. She is pregnant in this scene, okay? This is what happens. Genesis 16 verse 6 says this, but Abraham said to Sarah, because Sarah all of a sudden doesn't like Hagar. But Abraham said to Sarai, her name hadn't been changed yet, behold, your maid is in your power. Do to her what is good in your sight. So Sarah treated her harshly and she fled her presence. Now, listen. Today, we're talking about the test and the glory. The test and the glory. The test and the glory. Now, the angel of the Lord found her, Genesis 16:7, by a spring of water in the wilderness of Shur. He said, Hagar, Sarah's maid. The angel of the Lord addressed Hagar by name, which means the Lord knows our name. He knows exactly where we are. He knows exactly how we feel. He knew how Hagar felt before she even opened her mouth, okay? She was sitting in the wilderness by the spring on the way to Shur. He said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, where have you come from and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress, Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress, submit yourself to her authority. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said, I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. The angel of the Lord said to her further, behold, you are with child, you will bear a son, you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. Now, the reason that Hagar was in the wilderness is because she didn't know what to do. Do you guys ever find yourself, or she was out of options? She didn't know who to turn to. She was alone in her situation. She didn't know how to get out of her situation. She was utterly and totally isolated, alone, and she did not know what to do. Wilderness seasons are like that. You find yourself, and she was pregnant with Ishmael, which was a new season for her life. Have you guys ever found yourself, or maybe you're in that situation right now in your life where you're in the wilderness, you're sitting in the wilderness and you're thinking to yourself, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I'm sitting here in this uninhabited space like we talked about yesterday. I just need the good shepherd to tell me what to do. What Hagar needed in this situation was the good shepherd to come in and to lead her. One of the definitions that I talked about yesterday for the wilderness is referred to in that Hebrew word as a pasture. A pasture is where shepherds guide, lead, and take care of their sheep. So if you think of this wilderness where Hagar was sitting as a pasture, she needed the shepherd to lead her forward. If you are in a wilderness right now, and you're sitting there, you're out of options, you feel isolated, you don't know what to do, you don't know who's she going to turn to. Sarah, the lady who now hates her, Abraham, she has no one. Everyone in Abraham and Sarah's camp gave allegiance to Abraham and Sarah. Who's she going to turn to? She doesn't have a husband. At this point, she has no kids. Who is she going to turn to? For those of you that sit today and you're like Hagar, out of options, you have nowhere to turn, you're isolated, this is a test for you. Your test is, are you going to trust God when you're completely isolated and you have no one to turn to? The wilderness is good in this. It reveals a side of God that you didn't know was available to you before. If she was still in the camp of Abraham and Sarah, she wouldn't need leadership because Abraham would have provided it. If she hadn't run and sat down in the wilderness, she wouldn't have experienced the Lord immediately speak to her in this very specific way. In the wilderness, when you have nowhere to turn and you don't know who could help, who could guide, who could lead you, that's where you see the glory of God. The good in the wilderness is you seeing the glory of God in a different way. God didn't need to reveal himself to Hagar in the camp of Sarah and Abraham. Because like I just said, she would have already been provided for. But he met her as she was sitting alone in the wilderness. This is what he said. Where are you coming from? He knew where she was coming from. Where have you come from? And where are you going? Maybe God wants to get you to a point today where he's asking you, you're sitting in the wilderness, isolated and alone. Where are you coming from? And where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarah. She was in transition in the wilderness like we talked about yesterday. Where have you come from and where are you going? I'm fleeing. That's what she said. The angel of the Lord said to her, return. What did he do? When she was isolated, alone, and didn't know what to do, she asked for the counsel of the angel of the Lord, and he immediately gave her very quick, specific counsel. Where have you come from? Where are you going? I'm fleeing from my mistress Sarah. The angel of the Lord immediately answered her, and this is where the glory of God comes in, and he said, return. You don't know where you're coming, what's happening to you. You have no one. You have no leadership. You've run out of options. You're overwhelmed sitting in the wilderness. I'm fleeing from my mistress Sarah. Return. Submit yourself to her authority. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants, so they will be too many to count. I want to submit to you in Hagar's, in this passage of scripture. When you're overwhelmed with not knowing what to do, the Lord knows exactly what you need to do. There's no question marks with the Lord. There's no wandering with the Lord. He doesn't wander in the wilderness. He is present with his glory right there in the wilderness. He immediately gave her direction. And my heart is to you guys today. I understand what this is like when you're like, okay, what exactly what am I doing? You ever get to a point where you're like, what exactly am I doing here? I love that God asked her that. Where have you come from? Where are you going? Well, I don't really know. I just know I don't want to be back there. And what did God tell her? Go back, return. Immediately in her wilderness, her pasture, the good shepherd spoke up and gave her direction. For you today, who is in a wilderness like Hagar, have you asked the Lord for very specific direction? I feel just something in my spirit. I feel like the Lord has already given you direction, and you're not walking in that direction. What if Hagar would have said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sit right here by this spring of water. I'm just going to sit right here. Well, she probably wouldn't have survived very long because there was lots of wild beasts in the wilderness. She probably would not have been able to raise Ishmael and keep him safe. So when God said, I want you to go back, there was a safety thing involved there. God knew what was coming from her. God knew she was pregnant with Ishmael, and he wanted her to go back and make sure that Ishmael was preserved. Listen, as soon as he met her, he gave her direction. Your direction in your life when you are in a wilderness is not going to be hidden from you by the Lord. He will speak. Now, sometimes, I don't know how long she was sitting by this water in the wilderness. I don't know how long that she was there. It doesn't tell us how long that she was there, but God did show up. So if you're confused about direction, if you feel isolated, you have nowhere to turn, you do have a place to turn. And it is the good shepherd, and he will lead you forward. This is one of the 3 tests that I want to talk about today, because you are not without options. The enemy wants you to think you are without options. God is not going to speak to you. He's silenced himself. He's hidden himself, blah, 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 blah. But that's not true. He's ready, watching you in the wilderness, waiting for you to seek direction from him and him alone. And as soon as he shows up, he provides your answer. Take some time today if this is you. I've lost my comments over on Facebook. I don't know where you guys are. I'm hoping you're commenting. I don't know why they went away, but you know, everything's really glitchy and like all the little glitches and all the updates and stuff right now. I want you guys to take some time today, if that's you. I don't know who to turn to. I don't know where to get advice from. I'm just going to sit here. You've got an option in the Good Shepherd. Seek him. And when he gives direction, listen to what he says. That's how you win in your wilderness. Okay, I want to move on to this. I think this is very incredibly interesting. We're going to talk about the Israelites here for a second. And this is the second type of test. There's always a test in the wilderness, but then right after the test, the glory of God chases the test. We're not tested without being promised, when we pass that test, the glory of God. Exodus 13:15 says this, Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. Now, if you remember, I just said Hagar was in the wilderness of Shur. They both were in the wilderness in the same place. Isn't that interesting? If you remember the covenant of Abraham, and maybe you don't, but I'm just a Bible nerd. So God promised Abraham, you're going to be the father of many nations. I'm going to make you. I'm going to bless your seed. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of the different generations in you will be blessed. Well, Abraham had Isaac. Jacob was Isaac's son. Joseph was Jacob's son, and the nation of Israel was born out of Jacob's sons and Joseph's sons. So here we have the inheritance of Abraham. This is so crazy, you guys. Sitting in the exact same place in the wilderness that Hagar was sitting a long time before. That's a little Bible geek nerd background for you, okay? Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur, same place Hagar was sitting. And they went 3 days in the wilderness, and they found no water. Now, this is a test. Hagar's was, I have no options. I'm isolated. I don't know where to turn. I have no one. I am alone. I need help, and no one is here to help me, okay? That's her test in the wilderness. For the Israelites in the wilderness, the test is actually, let me turn the page so I get what I exactly want to say. Basic needs. There is a wilderness that God allows you to go through when some of us financially, we might not know where our car payment is coming from this month. That's just real practical. We don't know how we're going to, pay that bill, our mortgage this month. That's just really, really practical. Israel had basic needs in the wilderness that they had no idea how they were going to be met. In the wilderness, this is one of the tests that will absolutely happen. In the wilderness, our basic needs are often tested. Why? Because we have to have food. We have to have water. We need to have shelter. Not everyone has shelter, unfortunately, but we need to have shelter. We have to have oxygen. There are certain things that humans absolutely have to have. And in this specific situation, Israel had no water, and there was a couple million of them, and they were in the middle of the wilderness. They couldn't go back to Egypt. They were too far past Egypt to go back, and they're sitting there wondering, is this it for us? I don't know how in the world we're going to keep ourselves alive because we have no water. When you have a financial need, a basic need, your kid needs something, a healthcare need, whatever it is. And we all have different needs. We all have the same needs. We all have different needs as well. And you're in the wilderness. That's a test. God's not mean when he tests us like that, because he knows that he'll chase that test with his glory. Some of you are sitting there going, I have literally no idea how I'm going to make this payment. I have no idea how I'm going to go afford groceries at the grocery store. I understand. I have been in that situation myself. I literally don't know how I'm going to be able to provide for the next, God only knows how long. It's a basic need, but it's a test that God will show you his glory when submitted to him every single time. Listen to what happens. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness, and they found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Okay, so they found water, and they couldn't drink the water because it was poisoned with something. So the people grumbled. They had a complaint at Moses saying, "What shall we drink?" Then he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, and he threw it into the waters, and the waters became sweet. There he made for them a statute and regulation, and there he what? Tested them. Okay. So this need was not really a need because God knew he was going to show them his glory in order to meet the need. This need that they had was actually a test to see if they were going to throw in the towel, try to run back to Egypt, or if they were going to trust the God that had led them in the wilderness to begin with. Sometimes what presents as a need is not really a need because God's about to come through and blow your mind. It's just a test to see if you're going to trust him. What God did here, he knew that he had the power to make those that water sweet, to cleanse, to purify that water in an instant. He wanted Israel to depend on him and not anything else. What you're looking at as maybe a financial need, and these are scary needs, guys. I'm not saying that they're not. I totally 100% understand. What you're looking at as a need might present as a need, but it might be just a test to see, is she going to trust me with this? Is he going to trust me with this? Because I'm ready. I'm ready to make those bitter waters sweet. I have the method, I have the plan, I have the provision, and I have the power. I'm ready to do it. But is my child going to trust me with this very practical need? And as soon as Moses cried out, then he cried out, verse 25, Exodus 15:25. Then he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord immediately, when he cried out, he immediately showed him a tree and threw it into the water, and the waters became sweet. There was no delay. There was no, wait 3 more days. It's okay. Just wait a couple more days. No, God knew that they had a need. He was testing them, that's exactly what he said. There he made for them a statute and regulation, a statute and regulation, and there he tested them. Are you gonna trust the Lord? Let me tell you something. God's provision has not run out. His provision is not all dried up. He's the well that never runs dry. He has infinite resources. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, you guys. That's what the word of God tells us. There are storehouses it talks about in Malachi in heaven that he's just waiting to pour out on you. His resources are not dried up. He's ready to engage in your very practical need in the wilderness. But he wanted to be asked by Moses before he came in and made those bitter waters sweet. Let me ask you, are you asking? Are you asking? This happens a lot in these wilderness, obscure, weird seasons. You know what's so frustrating to the Israelite is that in Egypt, they knew where their food was going to come from. It wasn't like shocking. They knew where they could get their food. They had the cattle, they had the grain, they had the fields. But you know, when you're in the middle of the wilderness and there's been no seed planted, how in the world are you going to get bread? How are you going to get meat? How are you going to get water when you don't even really know where you're going? You're being led blind. That's what happens in the wilderness. We find ourselves in a place we've never been before, and we're frustrated because we know back in Egypt, yeah, we might have been in bondage, but at least we knew how we were going to be fed. Well, guess what? God wants to show you a new and different way. And that's one of the beautiful things about the wilderness. He shows you a piece of meeting your practical needs like nobody else can. And typically, it's a very weird way that he answers your prayer. Who would have thought they're standing at a pool of water that's bitter? They can't drink it. It's poisonous. They can't do it. And then all of a sudden they pick up a tree and they throw it in the water. Is that not crazy? I would not think that all of a sudden an entire body of water would become sweet based on a tree getting thrown into the water. But God knew he can make anything that's bitter sweet with his power and with his way. Look for provision in the wilderness a different way. Forget what you know about Egypt. Forget what you know about that. Ask God, what's a new way that you want to provide for me right now? What's the new way? Here we go in verse 16. Again, same problem. Again, practical needs. I understand this is a really big deal. Then Exodus 16, then they set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the sons of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin. They're still in the wilderness, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt, the whole congregation still need these practical needs met. Of the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Verse 3, the sons of Israel said to them, would that we would have died in the land of Egypt, when we sat by pots of meat. They're dreaming about the bondage of Egypt. When we ate bread to the full, for you have brought us out here in the wilderness to kill the whole assembly. So they're grumbling to Moses and Aaron. The Lord hears it. The Lord said to Moses, Moses didn't have to ask. God came in and he said, nope, I'm going to take care of this one by myself. I will, verse 4, rain bread from heaven for you. And the people shall go out and gather a day's bread every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my instructions. On the sixth day, when they prepare it, they'll bring it in and take twice as much. So Moses and Aaron, verse 6, said to all the sons of Israel, at evening you will know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your grumbling against the Lord. And what are we that you grumble against us? There was a basic need. Water first, bread second. It's so interesting that when we get in these wilderness seasons, even though we're transitioning to something great, we start dreaming about how it was back in the day, what we could have done back in the day. And God is leading you to a land that is flowing with milk and honey, and you're dreaming about pots of meat where you sat in complete bondage. God heard them. And he said, yep, I'm testing you in this, because I need to know if you're going to trust me with your basic need of food. And then what he did is he provided manna. And every morning, morning by morning, they would go out and they would gather this manna, which manna actually is translated, what is it? Because no one really knows what it is. And on the sixth day, they would gather enough for 2 days so they wouldn't have to gather on the Sabbath. And then, you guys, he also provided quail for them, which I'm not going to get into that today. He provided food for a couple million people for 40 solid years. It started off like this. I'm going to test them. I'm going to see if they trust me. And he came through with the water. He came through with the manna, and then the manna didn't stop. As a matter of fact, it says, Exodus 16:35, the sons of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came into an inhabited land, which is not a wilderness. We know that is Canaan. They ate the manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. And by that time, Egypt was way out of their view, and they had learned every single day we can count on God, because he is faithful. He is consistent. Not one day did they go out in the morning and not have manna. They were provided for every single day. Morning by morning by morning by morning, they woke up, and the faithfulness of God met them right there. But it happened when God tested them in the wilderness. Maybe God knows what's ahead for you. In Canaan, they had to learn how to farm. They had never farmed ever themselves. That generation, definitely not, because they were provided for every day. They had to learn how to do something a completely different way, but God wanted them to make sure that they depended on him alone. Not Egypt, not Pharaoh, not their pots of meat, not what they were able to sow and produce in Egypt. He wanted him alone to be the source of their provision. Maybe you have relied on something else long enough. And God is saying, I want you to stop relying on that. And I want you to rely on me alone for your basic needs of bills, food, water, whatever it is. He is that faithful. It's amazing to me how when we go to the New Testament, we see Jesus feeding the 5,000. That is an incredible miracle. And then he goes on a couple chapters later and he feeds 4,000 men, which is probably, something about somewhere around 8,000 total people. We're like shocked by that. And we're like, wow, that's such an amazing miracle that Jesus did. But in the wilderness, God provided food for millions of people every single day. Every single day. So what Jesus did with the 5,000 and the 4,000 is phenomenal. But when we see he did it 40 years for a couple million people, it should stir our faith to think, wow, if God did that for them, my need is very meetable. Practical need. The third way, and the third type of wilderness I want to talk about today, or the third test, would be exhaustion. Hagar was isolated alone. She had no one. God tested her. And then he came through and he gave her complete direction. The Israelites had a lot of basic needs. He tested them. They sought him, and then he provided. Elijah, we see him exhausted. I probably identify the most with this one in this season of my life because I know what it's like to be tired. Sometimes I'll look at people and they have, they're like footloose and fancy free. Like there's just not a lot. I think I'm just so tired. I just really want to take a nap. But this is something in a wilderness season that God will test us with. I want to read this to you. 1 Kings 19, then Jezebel, and this is right after Mount Carmel. I've preached on this a lot, but not in this way. Jezebel sent messengers to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me even more if I don't make your... Okay, I'm going to skip that verse. And Elijah was afraid. He was threatened. He was afraid. And he arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. Listen. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. And he came and he sat down under a juniper tree and there requested for himself that he might die and said, is it enough now, O Lord, take my life. I am not better than my father. He was in a depression is what was happening. He lay down and he slept under a juniper tree, and behold, there was an angel touching him, and he said, arise, eat. Now, this is for the person that is in your wilderness. You've been wondering a little bit, and all of a sudden you find yourself down, discouraged, and exhausted. This is one of the ways that God tests us in our wilderness. It's too much for me. I'm overwhelmed. I've been working and working and working for you, Lord, and that's done. And now all of a sudden I'm scared, I'm down, and I am exhausted. What does he say to the Lord before he lays down? He says this. It's pretty dark. I am definitely not in this place, but this is pretty dark. Requested himself that he might die and said, is it enough now, O Lord? Is it enough? Have I done enough? Take now me, for I am not better than my fathers. The Lord knew that he was getting low in the wilderness and that he needed not direction. He didn't need provision. He needed a sweet word of encouragement. And he needed rest. Some of you guys are wandering in the wilderness and you're tired, you're exhausted, it's got you low. You're saying crazy things. And all you need is a touch from the Spirit of God. You don't need provision at this time. You don't need direction. Maybe you will, maybe you have. But right now, what you need is encouragement and rest. Encouragement and rest. You know what the angel of the Lord didn't do to him? He didn't preach at him. He touched him. He lay down and slept under a juniper tree, and behold, there was an angel touching him and said to him, "Arise, eat." Then he looked, and behold, there was at his head a bread cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came again a second time. And what did he do the second time? This is like making me emotional. He touched him and said, "Arise, eat, because the journey is too great for you." So he arose, ate, and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days, 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. Listen, some of you are in a wilderness and you are completely exhausted. Maybe you're exhausted from your Egypt season. Maybe you're exhausted from all of the work that you have done on Mount Carmel, like Elijah. Maybe you're exhausted from worrying. Maybe you're exhausted from wondering how in the world you're going to provide for your family. Elijah was in the wilderness alone. He didn't need provision. He didn't need direction. He just needed a touch from God. Sometimes as doers want to work ourselves out of exhaustion. When the more we work, the more exhausted that we get. We think that working is the remedy to anything, and that's just not true. Have you taken some time to sit and let the Lord absolutely overwhelm you and care for you? A couple of weeks ago, it was Saturday morning. I think I've even talked about this because it was just so powerful. A couple of weeks ago, it was a Saturday morning, and I could so relate with just being, I was so exhausted. There's a lot of demand, put on all moms, okay? But especially working moms, and just in the season of life, there's just a lot that I'm carrying. And Saturday morning, all my kids were asleep, and I got up in the morning, and I was early. I get up early anyway. I love a sunrise. I can't even handle my life with the sunrise. But at times, it feels like everyone wants something from me. And ain't no one giving anything to me. Do you know what I'm saying? All the moms out there said amen. But I was kind of in that mental state. Like, everyone is asking me to do this for them. Everyone is asking for my opinion, my advice, whatever. And I just felt depleted. Totally depleted. I had gone to 700 football games that week. I had done a lot for a lot of other people that week. And I was just absolutely depleted. And as a leader, you can get there real easy. People don't understand what it's like to be a leader, that no one pours into you. You have to let the Lord pour into yourself and you. And I was sitting out on Saturday morning, just completely exhausted. Like, I couldn't even pray, you guys. I was like, I'm so tired. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to pray. I just know, don't ask me to do anything for you. That's how I was thinking. God, just don't ask me to do anything else. I'm tired. I'm tired of serving. Can we just be honest? Sometimes serving is tiring, okay? Sometimes giving advice is tiring, right? That's just honest. Can we be honest for 1 second? I'm sitting out there and the Lord said, stop talking. That's what he told me. He didn't preach at me. He didn't tell me something to do. He didn't give me a job to do. Thank God. I did not need another job to do that morning. He saw, just like Elijah, he saw that I was exhausted. I was worn out for caring for everyone else in my life. For 1 hour, you guys, I sat outside, said nothing. I had my eyes shut, and I have no idea how my kids didn't wake up. I had my eyes shut, and the presence of God descended on me and touched me, touched my soul, just like he did right here with Elijah, and started ministering to me and started speaking stuff to me. And I sat in his presence for about an hour, and the Lord rejuvenated and restored me. Sometimes we need direction. Sometimes we have practical needs like food, water, but sometimes we have mental and emotional needs in the wilderness that must be met by the Good Shepherd. All three of these are types of tests that you don't need to be shocked when they come, because his provision emotionally, mentally, his practical provision, his the provision of his direction, all of those things, he has the answer for. It's a test. Are you going to trust me or not? I want to just encourage you guys today, if you're in that, this is how you win in the wilderness. Just start turning everything over to the Lord. I don't know direction. I don't know where my food's going to come from. I don't know where my emotional well-being is going to come from in this. I just need rest. Start turning everything over to the Lord. Just start turning it over. Turning it over. What is it that is weighing you down? What test do you feel? What thing are you trying to control, but you just need to surrender it? What is that worry that you need to give to the Lord? What is that situation that you need to give the Lord? Just start surrendering, because a surrender is when the Lord can come through and provide whatever you need, and then you will win in that wilderness. Hagar won, the Israelites won, Elijah won when they were tested in that wilderness place, and the glory of God showed up to meet their specific need. Okay, guys, that's what I got for today. I feel like that was really good. God's word, yes, for the win. Look, I got my Bible recovered. I don't know if I have showed you guys yet. It was blue. Now it's green because of Psalm 23. He leads me beside green pastures. He makes me lie down in green pastures. See, I've got so much on my brain I can't even remember how to say it. He leads me beside still waters. It makes me lie down in green pastures. I hope that encourages you guys today. Tomorrow is going to be great. We're going to talk about Jesus in the wilderness. It's going to be good. So I will see you guys tomorrow, and share it with a friend, anyone who is in this wilderness season. And I'm telling you what, hopefully it will encourage him. So love you. 8:30 tomorrow. Meet me right here. Okay. Bye-bye.